side chick here, Heat.
Hi, everyone.
And we also have a special guest today, Kevin Pillow. Woo! So basically, he is one of my pool members, and he's an avid collector of comic books. And he is a walking encyclopedia when it comes to like TV shows, when it comes to like Agents of Shields, anything that you can possibly ask him. He probably basically, I don't know how you do it because I don't even sit still and watch
You
TV.
watch like one show and then you're done.
You know what? Yes, you're right. So our topic this week is about
comic
books.
So we're going to be talking about some new comic books, then talk about some more classic comic books in general.
So what will be like? What are you currently reading right now?
Right now, I am reading the current run of Avengers, West Coast Avengers, Captain America, which is being fantastically written by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Let's see what else.
Can I ask you about that? Sorry
Yes.
to cut you off. He did Black Panther as well.
Yes.
How's
And
that run?
I didn't read the Black Panther by him, but it was received so well. I know that he wins like a lot of the awards for writing and stuff like that. I know that the director for the Black Panther film brought him on as like a consultant and stuff like that. So he knows the character, he knows the background of that character and the whole universe around the Black Panther and Wakanda and whatnot. So I know that Marvel wanted to shake things up and take the writers out of their comfort zone and give him another classic character, and gave him Steve Rogers, and he has really kind of hit the ground running coming out of Secret Empire and done a really good job with the current Captain America run.
So he's doing
Captain America, the current main Captain America.
And he's also doing Black.
As far as I know, he is off the Black Panther. They shuffled it up, and there's another writer doing the current Black Panther.
Right, because they're rebooting the whole entire.
Ta-Nehisi Coates kept the continuity coming out of Secret Empire, where Steve, it's never really fully like defined of what he really was. If it was truly the Steve Rogers that we know that was brainwashed, or if it was an amalgamation of him. But it was the repercussions of him coming out of basically Captain America being seen as the president of the Hydra America, and then when that was all taken care of by the Avengers, he's now taking over as Steve Rogers trying to redo his whole persona and try to get back into good graces with the Americans.
So do you only collect Marvel comics?
No, I do pretty much anything Superman and Supergirl related. Mainly for Supergirl, it was mainly the artwork. I really enjoyed Art Germ's cover run, but I also know that her early run of the current series, the early issues was really critically acclaimed for writing and artwork. I do the Action Comics because I wanted to lead up to 1000, but I've kept it going after that. I did do the early Superman run under Bendis, but it kind of fell off for me. Bendis is kind of hit or miss. Brian Michael Bendis is kind of a hit or miss writer, but I gave up on that run. And I also do Detective Comics based on the recommendation of Javelle. So I've caught on from I think 996 and on, leading up to 1000. But and then other DC, it's all about the artwork and maybe a few. I'll do Batman Damned like everyone else, which was really well written.
Yeah.
Kind of bummed I think it's being delayed a month now for issue number 3.
Yes,
So.
I think it's going to be pushing into March now, mid-March. But do you do anything independent?
WWE comic from Boom Studios, which is really cool because if you're a wrestling fan, it kind of reimagines the storylines from the people don't understand is like professional wrestling is basically superheroes in real life anyways. But Boom Studios has taken the WWE storyline and kind of turned it on its head and kind of remastered it and put it like as if this happened in real life. It goes beyond the ring and takes these characters like a Daniel Bryan or an AJ Styles or a Samoa Joe or Nia Jax or whatever, and put them in real life situations based on their in-ring character, and then brings it back to the ring and there's champions and stuff like that. Other than that, I really enjoyed, I don't think you could consider them necessarily independent, but I really enjoyed the Betty and Veronica runs. The Adam Hughes short series was from, I think 2016, was really good. And I kind of kept it going with that.
And he reads someone too, Veronica.
Yeah, I remember reading the Archie horror ones. Yeah,
Horror ones,
Vampironica, Sabrina, of course, and then there was one other one, the new one, the Blood 666 or whatever it was called.
Yes, the Blossom.
Blossom 666. Yeah, the one that just came out. A couple weeks ago.
And did you know in a couple of months, Red Sonja, Vampirella, and another, I think it's Red Sonja is teaming up with Veronica and Betty from.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, I know, but I think the same writer as Veronica are going to be doing it.
Okay.
So,
Interesting.
looking forward to it. Actually, I'm excited.
I know Red Sonja's supposed to have a big year. I know that there's talk about adapting it either to a TV series like either on Hulu or Netflix, or possibly doing a movie. I've heard that, some rumblings, and there's some.
Didn't they make a movie before, like years ago in the 80s?
I think there was a Red
Yeah, there was like
It
one.
was that.
It's that forgotten time where they try to forget things that happened in the 80s.
Well, it's kind of like that Conan the Barbarian movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
It
It's
wasn't
like,
that bad.
it wasn't bad, but it's just like sort of forgotten to time.
Yes.
But at the same time, though, is Marvel just did relaunch Conan the Barbarian. I can talk today.
Yes.
And Arnold came out, and I guess Marvel sent it to him and said, "Hey, can you take a look at this?" And he really liked it. Like he really enjoyed it because it was kind of a cool modern story, but with that '80s kind of camp to it, like a little campiness to it. So they said they actually had Conan sign off on Conan. So
Speaking of the new, I know we're talking about strictly new comic books, but that one's like everybody. We kind of didn't order a whole lot of the Conans, but everybody was so excited that Marvel was, finally getting it back again. Because after Dark Horse, apparently Dark Horse, kind of did flat on the storyline. But since now it's on Marvel, I sold that.
yeah, it's really kind of come out. I've read a lot of things online that Marvel is really people have been pretty happy with. They were worried that Marvel was going to they're going to Disney-fy it or something like that, but. No, people have been pretty happy with it that I've read. So.
And what do you read?
What am I reading? Right now I'm reading Amazing Spider-Man. I'm getting, but I haven't read yet, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man because it's not as good as Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man when they ended that. I've been reading the new Tony Stark Iron Man.
Oh, so good.
It's really good. Really good. And I love all of the covers, especially that newest one with him like drowning in the Scotch glass.
Kind of a reimagining of what was that? The famous storyline was Death by a Bottle or.
Oh yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, and then I've also been reading the new Doctor Strange, which is pretty good. It's not like the best, but it's still solid. I'm trying to think what else I've been, because I know I've got a couple more Marvel titles I've been reading. And then I've of course been reading Sparrowhawk, which is an independent title that one's really
And
good.
that's by Boom.
Oh, okay, yeah. And then like we talked about those Archie horror ones, and then I read the first of Martian Manhunter, which I really liked, because I always liked Martian Manhunter from the Justice League animated show.
What is his powers?
So he can, at least this is, I don't remember very much, but I know that he can like shapeshift. That's like one of the big ones. And I think he also has like telekinetic powers, like some similar to Dr. X. Or Professor Dr. X, yeah. Let me just walk right out of this comic book show. But it's similar to Professor X in that way. And there was one other power that I can't remember, but yeah. But he was always such an interesting character in the animated series that when they come up with a new comic book, I was like, oh, okay, I'll pick this up and try it. And I liked the first issue. I don't know, is it I think it's monthly.
It's monthly.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see what the rest of them are.
Well, I know that with we go back to like the kind of the fishbowl kind of thing. Is I know that both books, both DC and Marvel, have been doing that. They've been trying to get more independent writers to come in, and that's kind of like in their contract or in their writer is that, hey, I'll come write for you, but I really want to tackle that character. And Marvel will go like, but that's not going to be one of our upcoming movies. And so they'll be like, too bad, I want to do it. And so that's why you've seen a lot in DC and Marvel, you've seen them bring in like totally random characters that, whether it be they're getting their own series or they'll make like, they'll be just walking down the street in the background of a scene, or they'll actually have a little bit in a story. Is like some of these independent writers that are getting a shot with the big boys are like, hey, I really liked this random character when I was a kid. I want to write, at least, write a little fraction about him.
Oh yeah.
And it's also a teaser too. Like it makes you like curious about that character. Now, speaking of, so my favorite writer, Donny Cates, he was so happy to finally actually write Venom. But unfortunately, he's not going to be writing it anytime soon. I think he's on just 2 more. Do you guys read Venom?
No,
I
don't read
don't,
Venom.
but I know that Marvel's doing that with a lot of writers. Is they're either getting them for short contracts or they're shaking them up. Like I said, they'll do a writer's retreat and they'll go like, okay, you guys are feeling comfortable writing X-Men. Okay, now I want you guys writing the new Fantastic Four. I want you guys to write Deadpool and stuff. And then obviously like Scotty Young, who's famous around the world for being this amazing artist.
Mhm.
He's like, I want to write, and they're like, okay, artist wants to write.
Speaking of Scott Young, did you read finally the Deadpool?
I read like the first couple ones. They're pretty alright. I mean, they're
I read the first one, and I thought for a guy who has spent most of his career drawing, getting a shot to write, I thought he was pretty funny. His personality as an artist came out, I think, in the writing, which I think was perfect for him to get Deadpool.
well, because he writes he writes I Hate Fairyland too, doesn't
Yes.
he? Or does he? Yeah. So and I sort of got some of the similar vibes in reading Deadpool. And I think it's alright. You know, I think it's not like the best thing ever. Because to me, Deadpool, Daniel Way's run will always be like the best one. Because that one really seemed to like make him more commonly known, and then the movie kind of came out right as that series ended. So.
And who's the writer? Because I'm so far behind on it. Who's doing the current run on Spider-Man Deadpool? Because
I'm not
that
sure.
is so
That-
phenomenal.
but-
Yeah,
you know what?
Spider-Man Deadpool's really good.
Marvel, please do not ever wipe the slate, because it's really good, especially when they did do you read it?
Yeah, oh yeah.
When they became oldies, like they were
Oh.
like in a senior living facility, and like it was the funniest thing.
Oh, it's so good. Well, my favorite arc from that was the Itsy Bitsy Spy, because that's such like
yes.
a creepy character and such like an interesting character swap in terms of like morals between Spider-Man and Deadpool, and I really dug that. And I don't remember what's going on with the
I'm not
new
sure. Spider-Man
because I know I read it, but I don't remember what's going on right now.
There's so much going on sometimes with that, and it's like, but I was like, yes, Marvel, do not get rid of that. Just let that book go on forever.
It's so good.
If you get a writer that's tired of writing it, find another writer.
Yeah, well, so back to Donny Cates. So now he's writing Guardians of the Galaxy. There's a bunch of things that he has a project this coming year, right? And I like his writing. And for anybody that wants to kind of like, get into comic books, pick up like. Would you recommend people to pick up like for cover purposes, or like what would you recommend to people?
Well, like I always recommended when people come like, oh, what should I read? I haven't collected comics since I was a kid or something. For the longest time, I recommended Gwenpool. I just absolutely love the character. It was an original idea. It was, you took the concept of Deadpool and went even further. Like you just went like, wait, I'm sorry, what? She's from our world and she's now in the comic world. So she's the ultimate breaking of the fourth wall, and it was such a unique, like literally thinking outside the box kind of character. I did recommend the same thing from the same aspect. I recommended the Steve Rogers Captain America. I know that it was panned critically, that people were like, and a lot of people that were connected to the character over the years, even as far as Chris Evans, who portrays the character on film, was like, why in a million years would Captain America, Steve Rogers, claim Hail Hydra? And I was like, but it's different. It's not going, it's not like Superman where it's like, oh, gee golly shucks, he's not the Boy Scout.
Mm-hmm.
They turned the character on its head, and I know people were like, oh my gosh, he's a Nazi. And I'm like, no, he's not. And just read the book, and there's more to it. And give it a shot. So I recommended those two for people that were like, because people are going to pick up Captain America, and they're going to think cookie cutter. They're going to think that Boy Scout. I'm like, no, read this. You want to like, oh my gosh moment?
Mm-hmm.
Read this. And then I would recommend right now, like I said, going back to the Tony Stark Iron Man.
Yes,
Just
absolutely.
unbelievable writing and the artwork, and there's a lot going on, but it's not too much that's overwhelming. I think it's an opportunity for you, as a reader, you really are put in the mind of Tony Stark and what's going on. It's almost like a first-person book that you're really in the mind of Tony Stark, because it's almost like I said, it's that borderline overwhelming book on the storyline that you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on, I have to put this down, it hurts my head, but it's like, no, I want to pick it back up, I want to read more. So.
What about you, Heath?
What I'd recommend right now, I think for sure, like the current run of Amazing Spider-Man is really good. It just 14 was the start of a new arc, so like if people need to jump back in, then and it's only 14 issues in, so if you want to collect them, it's not that many to get to catch back up. Tony Stark Iron Man, of course, was really good. The new Uncanny X-Men, like that. I think it's 15 issues, 12, 15 issues. I haven't read all the issues that are out right now because there's 11 of them, or there might be 12. No, 12 comes out Wednesday. But I've really been liking
Yes.
sort of it's especially some of the later issues in that run right now. It's sort of feels sort of newer X-Men, like X-Men Gold or Mr. and Mrs. X. Kind of has some of that stuff, but it also has some of the stuff that I like, which is old X-Men, and sort of has that vibe to it, which I dig.
So it seems like, is it easier to get into comic books with Marvel or with DC or independent? What do you guys think?
I think right now, at least in my opinion, Marvel is a little bit easier just because a lot of the stuff is only on issue like 7 or 8 or
because they kept bringing.
so
they're doing little mini-series, like, so you can kind of get like familiar with like, oh gosh, who wrote this, and you can go like, oh, who's this, and you got, and so of course, got unique names like Tanahashi Coates and what was the guy you like?
Donny Cates.
Donny Cates. Like, there's unique names that kind of jump out at you, and you're like, oh, this is kind of unique. Ones that I recommend, it's good, again, it's kind of easy consumption, is the Versus books. I think they've been awesome. Like Deadpool versus or Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe again.
Oh, yeah.
That was a hilarious run. Wolverine versus Deadpool was hilarious. It was so well written. Artwork was fantastic, and it was just enough kind of a morsel to kind of be fulfilled.
So you guys find it that Marvel is easy to transition?
I think it's a little easier to sort of jump into something that's either a shorter run or is just starting out. Whereas I think that right now DC has got a lot of good stuff, especially the that Witching Hour, because that was like the only thing I've read of DC besides Martian Manhunter was the Wonder Woman Witching Hour, which I really liked. But there's just a lot of tie-ins, and there's a lot of sort of moving parts that if you're not really kind of hip to it, it can sort of be overwhelming and sort of not kind of catch what's going on.
Do you guys like those tie-ins? Do you guys follow in? Like, so there's a big event for Marvel again. It's the War of Realms, and I guess there's a couple of where they're going to be tying in with Thor and the different issues. So how do you guys feel about that? Like the tie-ins. Do you guys catch up with it? Do you guys add it in your pool, or do you just forget it?
I did for a while. It was like when I first started collecting in 16, is when Civil War II was around. And I got into that because obviously at the same time the movie was coming out, and I was kind of getting back into the comics. And I had read Civil War I in a trade, and I was like, okay, I'll try this. And it just seemed like when I did the reading of like Secret Wars, and I read Civil War I, and I read House of M, and Avengers vs. X-Men, they always kind of happened in the summer. It was always like a big crossover. Like the whole year led to this big summer storyline. And now it almost seems like they're doing, like they're like, oh, that was really good. Everyone loved that tie-in. Let's do another one. So it's like almost from Marvel they're doing so much. With DC, when they do it, it's big. And it ties into all of them. Like with Marvel, it almost seems like they try to force it in.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I remember when I first started reading Civil War, the first one, I remember doing some research on it, and it was like, I want to say there was like 150 books that were technically in the Civil War I storyline. Not just the 6 Civil War books. There was Punisher War Journal, and there was Captain America, and there was Uncanny X-Men, there was X-Men, and then there was Wolverine, and everyone said, oh, Civil War tie-in. So like total, counting the 6 Civil War books, there was 150 total books in the collection that told the story of Civil War. And I'm like, okay, that's a lot. And then you realize, okay, because it went on for months. They're like, oh, the tie-in started in January, but Civil War doesn't start till July. So with Marvel, that gets a little frustrating. I know they're doing the War of the Realms, and it started like 2 months ago. And I'm like, okay, well, when does this start? Oh, it doesn't start till September? It's like, really?
Yes. I mean, I think that's what frustrates people too, like when you're collecting, because there's so many of them and you get lost. And even for us, like when we're starting to pull, we get so confused.
Oh yeah,
We're like, Lucy, Is this on like is everybody good? The tie-in with the DC, it's more settled.
Yeah.
It's more content in one little box. It's not like it's all over. You know, it's like the Heroes in Crisis. There's only one tie-in, I guess, this month, and then.
I don't know. I don't know anything about Heroes in Crisis.
See.
Well, there was the thing that they did. They gave you that little handy list.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I think there's only like a few. It's like these two issues of this one, these two issues of, which makes it a little more manageable.
Yes. It's not like Marvel where they just like, here you go.
Well, I really didn't like when they did the Spider-Geddon tie-ins because
oh my god,
there were so many of them, and then Ghost Spider, it was technically a Spider-Geddon tie-in, but it wasn't, and then like what I was reading at the time, my favorite, a few months ago, which was Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man, the last issue of that is just Spider-Geddon stuff. Like they just go into the Spider-Verse, Spider-Geddon thing, and that's it. There's no like ending to like all the stuff that they had set up and talked about. It's just like, yeah, no, just some Spider-Verse stuff. And I was like, oh,
I know, I feel so bad when people come in here. It's like, so do you have? There's so many Spider-Man. Like, you know what? I usually just, for anybody that's following Spider-Man. Spirit Spider-Man is actually good too. Do you read that?
I read the original. When it went after
Mm-hmm.
issue, was it 700 or 800 of Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man? Because that's like the big issue where he died, like in 2013.
Something like that.
Yeah, I read that original run, and it was really good. I haven't read the new one just because, from what I read, it seems almost very similar, if not the same, in terms of the concepts and like what happens.
So, what with the DC? I like their events.
I like their events.
Yeah, but I think in general, basically, like Marvel tie-ins, there's just a lot of them, and but you can also kind of read around them, whereas DC does a much better job of making it like a cohesive event. But if you're not really wise to what's going on when it first starts, you can sort of feel out of the loop, I feel like. So I think they're both. But DC seems to sort of handle tie-ins way better.
But the only thing I like that came out from DC, and honestly, I've been so vocal about this, is Batman Who Laughs and that Batman Dark Knight's Metal run, and Batman White Knight too.
White Knight. I see a lot of those books popping up on key collectors.
Well, you know what? Part 2 is coming up, I think this year. So Sean Murphy might be coming back here this year. So anyway, I think that's it from our new.
Yes.
Feels like there's so much more for you, right?
Yeah.
Right?
There's a
Well, yeah,
lot.
that's why this is a weekly show. Or monthly show, yeah, because there's a lot to talk about.
Wow. So we're talking about basically the classic comics,
Yeah,
how
absolutely.
we got started. Before all this craziness about Marvel and DC tie-ins and whatnot. So Kevin, what was your first comic books that you collected as considered as classic?
Well, the very first comic I ever collected was the trade paperback of The Death of Superman. And looking back at it now, I was like, I didn't realize. I mean, I knew it was a big event, but I didn't realize it until now when I look back. And I don't think it's technically a classic yet. It's still in the modern era because the Death of was like 92, 93. Was the trade paperback I got was like a 5th printing or something like that. And so I didn't realize until I think JaVale had told me, he's like, yeah, that's not the first print. And I was like, dang it. But the first classic book, I would have to say is my Uncanny 141, which I happen to have with me. Yes, I am Shaw. Because when I got into collecting, when I went to my first Comic-Con, I was like, okay, I'm going to a Comic-Con. I have to buy a comic.
Tell him like it'll show on the video.
So.
Well, no, but yeah, that's still fun. Yeah, because he wants to show them off. Because they're signed too.
Signed by Chris Claremont. But that was the first classic book that I purchased. Unfortunately, it was not purchased at Comic Asylum. It was.
Sorry.
I got a heck of a deal at on eBay. But yeah, that was my first. I wanted that cover. I loved the artwork on 141, and I remember I went to San Diego Comic Con in 2015 with my first my first Comic Con ever, and I was like, I had to go to a Comic Con and buy a comic book, and I could not find. I remember I was being such a cheapskate, and I could not find one under $100. And I was like, I'm not spending. I haven't collected comics in 20, 25 years. Why would I want to spend $100 randomly on some book? So I was like, no, not gonna do it. Not gonna do it. And I'm glad I waited 3-4 more years and got it for $20 less. But I got 2 books out of it. But looking back at it, you talk about events like Civil War or the Doomsday Clock or whatnot from DC or like a Death of Superman. These were like Death of Superman was months dragged on through 4 titles, through Action Comics, through Superman, Adventures of Superman, and Man of Steel. With Days of Future Past, we look at it now, and it's like, wow, Days of Future Past, that had to be like this huge event, like because it was turned into a movie and all this stuff. And it was technically 2 books. It was one. I mean, it was officially was 5 books, but really the meat and potatoes of the story was in 2 books. And it was 2 random stories in like January and February of like 1980. It was like, it wasn't in the summertime. It wasn't where the typical big events.
You weren't even born yet.
I know, I was not born yet.
Wow.
You were like years away from being born. So.
Oh, shush.
But it was just so unique. I remember JaVale telling me, he's like, oh yeah. And I was like, well, what happened before like Days of Future Past? I'm like, oh, the Dark Phoenix saga. Wait, what? 2 of the biggest events, not only in X-Men history, but probably in the Marvel universe, is is the Dark Phoenix saga and Days of Future Past, and they happened back to back. So you're talking about from like September of 1979 to February of 1980, you have 2 of the biggest storylines in Marvel X-Men history, and it's like these weren't even like crossover events; they were milestone events. So it made me go back and collect and read these because it's like I wonder. It's the closest thing I'm going to get to like a little bit of history. I would love to have that Hulk 181, but
You can have this one.
as the Hulk poo.
Is that an actual comic? Like, what is that?
Yes.
It's Do You Poo. It's by Murat Michaels. Honestly, I have not even opened this. It's an actual Winnie the Pooh character in there that's Deadpool-like, that just kills everyone.
Oh,
pretty
okay.
much.
Neat.
So that you can have this one. You can even personalize it yourself. You see? Happy Father's Day, Honey Bun Buns. Hulk 181. So what do you have? I know you're into Spider-Man.
Yes.
And JaVale somewhat completed your collection.
Yes.
And my husband has somewhat completed.
He's helped me out with Action Comics and with the Uncanny into the Bronze Age. So
Yeah, because I when I first started collecting comics, I was like 15, 16, so because I like when I was young, my grandfather used to buy me like Batman comics in that era, so from 90s, 2000s. But then I didn't really start collecting and like realizing that there were like issue runs and you know what I mean, until I was like 15 or 16, and I started collecting not classic at all, but the Death of the Family, that whole run. And I got like all the issues, all the tie-ins. And then I collected, some classic Spider-Man and X-Men ones that I found, just like, random, a couple of McFarlane's and some older Uncanny X-Men that I liked. And then just like in the last like year, I've started really collecting. I'm trying to get all the McFarlane. I now have all of the McFarlane like ones that he wrote, that like 15, 16 run of Spider-Man, and then I'm trying to get all the Jim Lee X-Men, and I have I think like 5 of those out of the 11 that they have. So, but yeah, because I collected them and I liked them, and I didn't realize it's really cool to have like the old runs of these and everything, and not just like the trade paperback or whatever.
Yeah. That's why I usually tell people, I mean, if you're just going to read it, and with Marvel, back to Marvel, they are doing the True Believers #1, like
I love those.
the
Those are
classic ones. It's only for $1 if you want to get a hold of like the actual comic book. It's reprint, but I mean, it's a good thing.
yeah, that's what I do like about that. I know DC's thinking about doing something similar to like a True Believer kind of style where they reprint like old books, and I know that I think they've done it with Action Comics #1, but I know that they want to do it with more of like the key books, like
They
like a Detective 27.
Yeah.
But I know the True Believers is great. they've really, Marvel has done a fantastic job from a digital media standpoint. Their Marvel Unlimited app and program is fantastic because you can go back and even though you're reading it on an iPad or an iPhone or an Android or tablet or whatever, but you can go back and you can open up a Hulk 181. You can open up. You could even open up a Captain America #1 and go back. I mean, I've done the same thing with Comixology with DC, but Marvel runs their own deal with Unlimited, and I think it's like $10 a month, and you can go back and you can read either in a collection form like a trade paperback, or you can read the individual issues.
Yeah.
But I have a question for you guys because I don't really, and the person that is best to ask about Silver Age or anything that's older comic books beyond his age is my husband. Anything modern, I can actually, talk to you
Oh,
guys
yeah,
and
absolutely.
have a little relate to you guys. Now, how would you break it down on Bronze, Golden Age, and Silver?
Well, I mean, Golden is like the classic. What did it start? The 30s
I
or
think
the
it's
40s?
like 30. It's like in the mid to late 30s, like
Yeah.
37, 38 to like the mid to late 40s. It's a short run because the Silver Age was. Well, no, I take it back. Golden Age probably took it up to maybe to the 50s because I think the Silver Age, which actually, it's funny, is like you think gold, it's like the gold standard. It's like this is like the epitome. We're like the Golden Age is just meaning like they're probably the oldest.
Yeah, and they're the hardest to
and
find.
they're the hardest
now.
to find. Silver Age is, people think Silver Age is the prime of the great storylines. You're talking about the advent of the X-Men. So you're probably thinking like the 60s for Silver Age. And then
So
probably
Venom is Silver Age, obviously, right? The first appearance of Venom, or
The symbiote Spider-Man, or I don't remember when did Secret Wars come out?
that was in the 80s. I thought.
Yeah, because I was about to say I would think it would be either
Bronze Age or Modern.
bronze or copper. I've heard as well.
Copper is kind of like
God, there's so many of them.
Well,
well.
there's really like 4, and then there's modern.
Well, the problem is that I think Copper was kind of adopted because it's tough to say like, oh, anything after like 19, because I think this is like Days of Future Past and whatnot as a Bronze Age book.
Yeah.
So it's a 1980. I think the Bronze Age ended like 84-ish, and it's a lot of people were like, okay, so from like 1985 to 1986, it's modern age, and I think that the Copper Age kind of went right into like maybe the early 90s.
Yeah.
It's kind of, again, that's kind of the it's debatable.
Yeah.
Because you're thinking of like, it's like, how can you lump in first appearance of Venom and the Jim Lee X-Men and stuff like that?
Oh yeah. With modern.
With
stuff,
modern.
it just doesn't. Yeah.
And so, and it's like, you think modern age, you think of how they print books now too. It's that glossy paper, whereas like you have these old classic books that have the true paper pages, the smell and stuff like that. And so like when I was collecting the Superman books, that was actually that run that I did from like 1993 to about 95, 96, is in that period they jumped from the paper to the paper to plastic. Like, it's not really plastic, but it's that, whatever that is.
It has like
It's like that shiny paper, or whatever
Yeah.
they call it. And I didn't like it. It was like you lost the smell, you lost the touch, and stuff like that. So
I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't smell anymore.
yeah, I would almost say like the copper. I always say like the Copper Age would probably, if you're a believer in the Copper Age, it ends. I say it ends when they went to switch from paper.
Oh yeah. It's like that newsprint to like
Yeah.
almost like that sheen paper.
But
But I love this kind of type of paper
Oh my
because
gosh,
it just
yeah.
captures all of what's going on that year,
Yeah.
And anybody who picked it up, the smell of everything.
Oh, yeah. Have you guys seen Logan?
yes.
The movie?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So in the movie they have those like comic books that Laura's reading.
Yeah.
They're fake, right? Because the guy who did Old Man Logan at the time, he drew the covers and then a couple of the key, insides. Because there's only a few pages that they actually show. I actually got in touch with a guy on Etsy, and I'm gonna get him. There's 7 covers, and I'm gonna get him to make them all, but like this, where they're on like the newsprint paper and everything, so they look like old X-Men covers and everything. I'm gonna get like.
Well, I know that's what Marvel did for a while. They did, what was it?
The
By design.
X-Men
Something
Classified?
design. Something designed.
Yeah.
And they did it old school style. I remember I was like, okay, they better not screw this up. And I remember the first time I opened up the book, there's the smell. They even captured the smell. I was like,
I wonder, does it cost for them more to print it out and use this kind of paper, or does
It just.
I think it was.
Oh, okay.
I remember the old. And hey, leave a comment if you know for sure. But I remember the local shop that I bought from in Oceanside when I was collecting as a kid. I asked him, I was like, "Hey, did I get like a special edition or something like that?" I remember asking him the first time I had the shiny paper, and I brought it to him. And he's like, "No, they made the switch. Like both DC and Marvel made the switch." And I was like, "I don't like it. Like, can they go back?" And he goes, "Oh no, they made a decision a few months ago or whatever it was, because of cost. That it was more cost effective. I don't know if it's a recyclable thing or if it's just to me maybe it is a cost thing because I think that the books like this when you open it up it does look like a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It just has that, and that's why I think
It has characters.
Yeah.
Some floss in it.
Well, I think too the way in which, because I think it is like a special heavy stock of newsprint, and to buy newsprint is already pretty difficult.
Yeah.
And I think the reason they probably swap too is just so that way, because especially if you take care of these, they'll last a while, but they do yellow. You know what I mean? If you don't take very good care of them.
So we're going back to the if you're talking about the new books. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
I think Secret Wars even has, because this was a 2000s
That's the
book.
glossy one.
Yeah, these are the
Over there.
glossy.
Oh
But
yeah.
I thought maybe they went back to those ones, but
So I would like to. I mean, so where can you even find this type of paper now?
Because I was looking, because when I was gonna print them myself at first, but then I found a guy I liked. Really, the only thing you can do is buy newsprint in bulk, like the big rolls of it. And I mean, it's not like you can print it at home on your inkjet printer. But like, pretty much the only thing you can do is buy like bulk newsprint, or like you can get like sketch newsprint, because a lot of art schools have people who do projects on newsprint. But even then, it's not as thick because this is a thick stock newsprint.
One more thing about this type of paper too, it grabs on the color
Yes.
of the realness of the color. Unlike the ones that, I mean, I've mentioned this to you guys, when I'm standing behind the counter and if I see all the comic books, it's the same yellow that they use, it's the same palette that they use. This one, it's like every yellow has different shades, different,
Yeah, and I think that's not only the paper. I think because it's printed matte. You know what I mean? It's printed in a matte, not a gloss. Whereas now everything is gloss for some reason. Everything's printed in that like gloss. Whereas this is very clearly a matte finish, which is honestly, when you're printing any sort of newsprint, usually looks better unless you're making like a magazine or something.
I just absolutely love it. Like I said, when I said that, was it Grand Design? X-Men Grand Design. I saw that, I'm like, oh, they're bringing it back, and it was just meant to be just like a one-off.
Oh, I should have brought, I don't even know if I have
Oh, have you seen the giant ones they have at like Barnes and Noble, like the trade paperback ones that are printed on even like more like this paper than when they did
I've
the
seen
run?
that.
Yeah, they're giant size. They're like about
wow.
this big, and there's two, because of course there was Grand Design and there was Second Genesis.
Oh, okay.
There's two of them, and then one of them has like posters in it too. But they're huge like this, and they're printed on paper that's even more like this.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and they're not that bad, because for being a giant size comic, they're only $30 a piece, which honestly for 2 issues of a run is not bad.
So what do you guys consider what is a must for you guys to have a Holy Grail? What would be your top things that you want?
I mean, obtainable. That's like a Holy Grail. I think that it's not out of the realm of possibility. Like a book like Hulk 181 is not completely out of the realm of possibility. I was just actually talking with my wife about that. She's like, is there a book that you don't have that you think like that would be like obtainable? I said probably Hulk 181. I mean, it's still probably going to cost you like at least maybe anywhere from a couple $100s to $1,000 or something like that. But I said I don't even need it necessarily have to have a slab.
And how? You're like, what the heck is that?
It just depends. It depends on your taste, because if you're a Superman fan, obviously the Holy Grail is Action Comics #1, but you're looking at inexpensively. You're looking at 6 figures. You're looking at $150,000 to start off to get an Action #1.
Didn't a really pristine version just sell for like well over $1 million?
Like on Key Collector, the app that I have, a great book, which is rated, like I think Javel said, a great book can be considered anywhere from like a 7.0 to a 9.8. they have listed at 1.5 million.
Yeah.
Is the average price. But I mean, like a realistic Superman book, you could probably get like a Superman #1, which I think has the green skeleton on it.
Oh yeah.
That's probably like in the hundreds of dollars. The Death of is $10-20, like a first appearance of Doomsday. The Death of, which is Superman 75, probably like I said, probably even polybagged you can still get for like $20. But if you want to talk about like if you're a Superman fan, the Platinum Edition of Superman #75, which is a super rare, is the retail variant. It's in a silver. Oh, it's right. It's a black bag with the silver.
Oh yeah, I've seen some of those. Yeah.
That one goes for at least like $150. So I mean, obviously it holds its value to be still in the polybagged. X-Men, anything from like 129 through the 150s, or a Jim Lee.
Yeah, or the Jim Lee run that starts at like 240. Is it 240? Or is it a little before?
Well, I mean, like X-Men, the new title, the first new title.
Oh,
which
it was the
like,
11 X-Men.
It was the X-Men run, which was like X-Men #1 through 11. I can never remember how to say it. Felix Continuum or something like that. The one that had like the hologram covers.
Oh yeah.
Those are realistic, attainable books.
Yeah.
If you're a Wolverine fan, the Wolverine for volume 1 through 4, the iconic cover with just the claws, and he's got the grin on his face. Like you can get that for like maybe $100. So I mean, there's obtainable holy grails. It's all based on personal preference. It's all based on what you think is like the holy grail.
Yeah.
Well, the most obvious one for modern book is Walking Dead #1.
Oh yeah.
But you're looking at least a couple grand, maybe.
Yeah.
I think like the cheapest one, like in a 9.8, was sold for like $6,500. So that would be, I think that's the holy grail of modern books. But it just depends on, you might get a Walking Dead fan say, I don't want Walking Dead #1, but I want a key book. First appearance of Negan, first appearance
Or
of
the Death of Glenn or something like that.
Yeah.
Or something like.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that like when you talk about a holy grail, you have to talk about what resonates with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's because I think that like for me, I like some like random issues of certain like Spider-Man and X-Men and they're not like I go on eBay or like I look around here and they're like $10-20 and it's it's part of that's because of sort of the boom/crash of the comic books in sort of the 90s and 2000s, but it's also just because it's personal to me and I like it and it means a lot for me to have it in my collection.
Yes.
But it's not like it's valuable, because I think if you just start buying comic books that are valuable or rare, you're just gonna have a collection of stuff that's expensive but not that you care about.
And you guys are probably gonna laugh at me because you guys are talking about Silver Age and the Holy Grail. What will be my Holy Grail will be like the first X-23, like on an X. That will be my thing. By the way, before we go, I need to show you guys. Of course, we didn't even talk about Stan Lee. I mean, he has to be somewhere in the classics. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I gotta grab this real quickly.
Now, while she goes and gets that, where do you stand on the whole Stan Lee credit and stuff like that?
I don't know. It's like I don't think
I'm not trying to start World War III.
No. Well, I think what's interesting is that he did. I think he did a lot. He obviously didn't do as much as maybe he thinks he did sometimes, but I mean, he still was a prolific figure in comic books, and I think he did a decent amount. Maybe not as much as some people say or he said, but I don't think it's like he was a hack or a fraud or didn't do anything like some people claim.
I think it was a team effort, definitely, but
Yes.
he's the one who actually was more out there. And
I think too is like I think he gets a lot of credit because he was the editor-in-chief when it was kind of fluctuating a little bit. Like Marvel was on the downside. The comic code really.
Oh my god.
Like by the way too, I don't know if you can't see it on here, but right here above it says the approved by the Comics
Code Authority.
If you could find a book, like I would love to get a hold of like the first book that Marvel went and ripped that off and took it off. That'd probably be a key issue to have. But,
Oh yeah.
I think that Stan was revolutionary because he was the first in that Silver Age, Bronze Age era to think outside the box, try something new. Don't just go with the cookie cutter. Because if you think at that point, you had guys like, and he'll even talk in some of the documentaries he does for ABC, is he talks about like everything was just so safe. And so he dared to be different. He gave this teenager incredible powers almost to the point that he didn't know what to do, but at the same time he has to deal with, hey, does that girl like me? Did I get my science fair?
Yeah.
Did I get my science homework done? Oh my gosh, I've got a pimple. And create, boom, he's got Spider-Man. And he kind of teed it up, and guys like Jack Kirby and Ditko and John Romita and some of the other guys that wrote for Spider-Man ran to the races and stuff like that. So I think everyone's like, oh my gosh, he didn't create him. Like, he created Spider-Man. He created the X-Men.
Yeah.
But he maybe didn't hit the home run. He put it on the tee, and the next guy.
Yeah, I think he definitely did a good job of sort of figuring out what was different and sort of what would work. But I think, it's obviously he didn't like sit down and write every single issue and draw every single issue. But, I think he did a good job of working with other people, and even there's a lot of debate about which artist created it's Steve Ditko and who's the Jack Kirby
yeah.
did like the first Spider-Man, but still he didn't like it, and I think that he did a good job of sort of picking the people that would creatively would take it to where it needed to go, not necessarily him taking it there himself.
But not to step on the toe, we're kind of filling time, but what you have here is literal history.
Oh my gosh,
in comic book, and it has a price tag. You're actually gonna sell this?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, I was surprised. I looked back, and then he didn't even tell me what's going on, and then I'm like, what is this old comic book?
Well, there's a Marvel Comics version, like when they did like the new run, #1 right there too.
But for those
it's far less.
But for those who don't know what the Black Knight is, this is
Is it Stanley?
This is
the
the very first
one before Marvel. He went to Marvel.
This is the first book that he wrote.
He wrote.
So, and then we do, because he wasn't known for his doodling. He's not much of an artist.
No. But it's, like we're talking about like the character of the comic book. Look how tattered and like it's all.
This would
ripped
probably
out.
be in the 4s, maybe.
Yeah.
And now, is he going as? His name is not on the book, is it?
I think it's inside. It's
Well,
not
because
even
they
outside.
didn't credit writers in the book until they were trying to write horror. Marvel was trying to write horror comics.
And nobody wanted their name attached to it.
Well, no, what it was is that the Comics Code Authority was like, you can't have any of these words,
Yeah.
and you can't have like anything that says like wolf, vampire, anything like that. But there was a writer, his name's Marv Wolfman.
Yeah.
And they put it in the comic book to basically stick it to the Comic Codes Authority, and then after that, all the other writers were like, well, if his name's gonna be in it, maybe, anybody else who writes a comic book, their name should be in it.
Well, the only reason I asked is because obviously it wasn't until the story, at least the story that I've heard, the folklore is that Stan Lee, obviously he wrote comic books for a while and worked on different publishing companies, but he changed his name from Stanley Leibowitz to just Stan Lee, and with obviously no relation to Jim Lee, but that's a whole inside joke.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know. Throw myself under the bus. I didn't know what ethnicity Jim Lee was. So,
Definitely not white, dude.
I'm just kind of curious and then we'll have to have Javelle open this. I'm curious if it does have his name in it, if he's known as Stan
I'm
Lee.
even afraid to even open it because I feel like it's gonna fall apart.
Well, you can always get.
we can always
you
look
find
it
the PDF version and just look it up on
But do
there.
we really have it here?
No, but I'm saying is no one wants to touch
nobody
it.
wants to touch it because it's like I
It's
said.
like,
It's,
I'm sure there are a bunch of people that want to buy this, but I don't think anyone wants to
no,
touch
I don't
it.
think it's not. No.
this would get framed at home.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that one goes up on the wall.
Conversation piece. It'll be like Thanksgiving. Here we go. Look at what I got.
I will say I'm watching chick nervously manhandle a book that's from the 40s probably.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, somebody wrote it here in 1955. So I don't know if that's.
Who does that? Seriously,
That's rough.
Um,
At least it's in pencil. It's in pencil, so if you got someone that's like a professional restorer
they could possibly take that.
Yeah, because if it was anything except pen, because I mean those pens from the 40s,
Oh.
the ink is just—it's about as permanent as permanent
You
can
can
get.
use Sharpie. You can like actually touch it yourself.
It just reminds me because obviously I'm watching the chick. I'm like, what are you doing? There was an issue or an episode of Comic Book Men. They used to be aired on AMC, where a guy brought in Detective 27, first appearance of 27 or 26. I think it's 27.
First appearance of
Batman.
20.
It's either 26 or 27.
Yeah, I think it's 26.
Regardless, he's got the first appearance. It's primo condition, and this guy is just happy to be passing through Red Bank to take it to a comic show for the owner. He has a silver briefcase, handcuffed to his wrist. He said, "You guys want to see it?" So he opens it up, and this guy Brian Johnson, who's not the big comic book nerd that all the rest of them, just grabs it, meat hands, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this book is from like the 1940s or something like that."
Jesus.
And I'm like, and you saw every face on that show just like had a mini heart attack. And so that was me watching Chick with the Black Knight right now. I was like, "Oh my gosh."
Well, thanks, Kevin Pillow, for coming in again. This
Yes.
Did you just say thanks for having us?
Yes.
Like we're his guest? Is that what you were saying?
Totally.
Yes, thanks. Where do we find you, Kevin?
At Voice of Reason 23. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and actually Snapchat and Twitter. And I'm always posting stuff about it.
By the way, my kids want me to say, they're like, "Why don't you do this on your show?" And I'm like, okay. So I guess like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Well, thank you so much. Chicks here from Comic Assam and Heath and Kevin Pillow. Thanks, you guys.
Bye.
Hi everyone, don't forget to subscribe at Comic Assam Palm Desert, and the first 250 people that subscribe could win this 9.8 CGC Joshua Middleton Batgirl number 23. Don't forget to subscribe.